podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn. Welcome to How We're the podcast from Roker Report as we continue to run through our Sunderland AFC Top 10 series. And I hope you've enjoyed them so far, because up to now, we've assessed the best that Sunderland has to offer. But today, by popular demand apparently, we delve into some of the worst that our beloved club has served up to us over the years, because you might have thought that we went full metal Brexit last time, but today we're going to be ordering the top 10 Sunderland worst foreign players to have played for Sunderland FC in the Stadium of Light era. And like last time, by foreign, we mean not the British Isles, so nobody from Scotland, England, Wales, Northern Ireland, or the Republic of Ireland is to be considered. And because of the sheer dross that we've had over the years, that have played for one game before they've disappeared off the face of the planet. I think we had a big long list during Peter Reid's era, I think, when we were going through this. We did place a rule that they had to have had a minimum of 10 appearances for the club, because then at least you can assess whether they were actually crap or whether they just disappeared because they had one bad game, or whether they said something a little bit naughty in the background to whatever manager there was at the time. I mean, this started out sounding like fun, I have to admit, but I'll not lie, generating the list genuinely put me in a bad mood. So once again, I'm not going to do this alone. I once again have three gentlemen who today can't wait to lay into the players we have listed to produce our first worst top 10 of the series. First up, we have the man who was probably the main driver behind today's topic, because he's apparently sadistic and loves this sort of stuff. It is, of course, Gavin Henderson. Hello, Gav.
Hello, mate. Yes, I've been cracking me knuckles. I've been sitting in the dark, listening to heavy metal. I've been shadow boxing. I'm ready for this one. I'm feeling aggressive.
But I mean, I wasn't actually taking the mic by popular demand. It seemed like all the responses to top 10s were going, when are you going to do a worst one?
Yeah, that's it. We have done a lot of positive top 10s, haven't we? So we thought it's about time we turned the tide a little bit and we focused on some of the shite that Sunderland have signed over the years. And to be honest, this might be quite cathartic, because we can reflect on this and go, bloody hell, how good we've got it now.
There's nothing cathartic about generating the list. I know that. I mean, it was like, I felt knackered afterwards just because of the pain I had to go through just to type these buggers' names out. I had to get a shower afterwards just because I'd bloody typed them out, never mind bloody talked about them or anything like that. But yeah, we've got a couple more gentlemen with us. Next up, we have someone who now has his own parking space at TalkSport headquarters. It is, of course, Johnny Hawley. Hello, Johnny.
Yeah. Morning, Chris. I've managed to clear a bit of time in my busy schedule. Come and chat with the plebs again,
we always appreciate it, mate. Thank you very much. And we'll tell you a few things to tell Jason Cundy and the lads later on when you get back to that. But to be honest, Johnny, I genuinely do have a little bit of envy for you, because simply you haven't seen as much crap as us, and I envy you for that.
Yeah, that's just something that my dad was sort of drilling into us from a young age. He was like, listen, son, you don't understand. It's not normally like this. We don't normally get promoted and not get relegated and beat the Mags and get the cup finals. You'll learn one. And then I turned it right back round on him when we sank to 15th in League One. I was like, oh, by the way, Dad, we've now both witnessed the lowest point in this club's history, so you can stop with all that. So there you go. I think I've started to pay me dues a bit at least.
Yeah, that's it. Well, like I said, I do envy you, because I have memories of all of these players going back to some of them, a couple of one or two to Reedies, maybe one. Well, we'll get into it, but thank you. You're lucky stars you don't remember them actually being on the pitch for us.
Yeah, I said I've started to pay me dues, not that I've reached your lads' level. Don't worry.
No. Well, we'll see. We'll get into it. But also joining us is someone you may recognise from our On This Week weekly podcast and across the board with news roundups and all sorts. And you'll have definitely heard his voice if you fancy that Last of the Summer Wild style walk down memory lane we hopefully put out every Monday if we've got about 10 hours free during the week to put it together and record. And actually, he's the only man on this pod who has seen more crap than I have play for Sunderland, which is a thumbs up for me. It makes me makes me feel, warm inside that somebody on this pod seen more shite than I have. But we're very pleased to have Andrew Smithson with us. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, everyone. Yes, wow, Chris, what a welcome that is. You've seen more shit than me. I mean,
absolutely.
Way to make your guests feel good there, Chris. Like,
yeah. Well, it's funny because Johnny was just talking about there about things his dad was saying. It's funny because I grew up, telling, hearing stories from my dad. My dad used to talk to me about Jimmy Montgomery and Len Shackleton flicking. My dad used to work on a building site. I've told this story before on this week. My dad used to work on a building site, and Len Shackleton walked past and flicked a coin up in the air, caught it on his foot, flicked it back open in his top pocket. And I'm going to be telling my son about Lawrence de Bock. It's a generational thing, isn't it?
Spoilers, lads.
Well, he may or may not be on the list. We'll see. I think I can guess, really.
I thought we were doing the biggest flops, not the biggest heroes of our recent history, Chris. I think there's been a mistake here. Sorry, boys.
Look, I'm trying to kind of soften the blow of talking about. I'm trying to mention a couple of decent names in this pod.
You've got me thinking now. That here's a question to throw to mainly Chris and Andrew, but also you can come in on this, Johnny. Who were the names of foreign imports when you were younger that your dad used to slag off? Mine was always Thomas Hauser. My dad couldn't stand Thomas Hauser.
Goal machine. He was a self-confessed goal machine. That's what he called himself, Thomas Hauser. But no, because it's funny because we were talking about, wasn't it, that basically the Stadium Light era is where it kind of started, really. I remember my dad didn't talk about him, probably because you had Marangoni, didn't you?
Yes, there's another one, yeah.
In the 80s or 70s. And
I don't think he was a bad player, though, was he? He just didn't work for him.
Yeah, well, it was on the back of the Spurs bringing in Ozzy Ardiles and Ricky Villa in, wasn't it? But I can't think of anything beyond that, Andrew.
No, Marangoni, I think, he arrived a very different culture within football with regards overseas players.
Imagine turning up from South America to Sunderland in the 70s and 80s. I'm shocked it never worked.
No, you're right. In the Roker Park days, we didn't have too many players that came from overseas. I think we had a couple of try lists and it didn't quite work out. But like Chris says, we had to rule out anybody that didn't play 10 games or more because we would have just been here for days going through some of those names.
Dennis Smith had quite a few, actually. Remember there was a couple, one or two from Yugoslavia at the time?
Yes.
And there's a famous picture of Stig and Bjorneby.
Yes.
Playing for Sunderland on trial.
Yeah.
But Dennis Smith never signed him, and there was a couple.
If you go on to StatCat, this is how I certainly remind myself of it. If you go on to StatCat and you see some of the names, if you go into the appearance list per season, and there's like players who played friendlies, there was loads under Reedy too. Loads of players who came in on trial had like one game and then.
Can you remember there was a Brazilian guy who played against York in the League Cup?
It was Walsall, and he was called Marco Di Giuseppe.
That's it. Yeah,
Brazilian player. I think he played against Walsall for us in the League Cup, which I still don't understand how that worked.
I know.
How do you play a trialist in a cup game? But we did. I think he came on as a sub, and we chose not to sign him, but Walsall did. And Walsall had seen enough and decided they wanted him.
I really did have quite a few on. Actually, just going back to Thomas Hauser, he had the distinction of being wasn't he the first German to play in the top flight?
He was the first German to score in the top flight, I think.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, it kind of doesn't make sense that he scored, but I know what you mean. The overall that stat would make sense.
I think it was a consolation in a defeat, to be fair.
Yeah, well, it usually was that season, but yeah, if answers on a postcard, everyone kind of tell us about trialists because of course that trialist. I mean, he could never get a contract, could he? Every single year.
On the other hand, he was never out of work. He's always busy.
He kept coming back, to be fair, didn't he? That fella, trialist. But anyway, put answers on a postcard. Let us know and give us some feedback if you've seen some of these trialists try to get a contract with Sunderland from abroad and never get them, because it's likely they'll be better than some of them we're going to talk about now. Because let's crack on, because I said we're shamelessly stealing the BBC Match of the Day top 10 format. So anyone not familiar, we pick a subject to rank, which in this case is the worst top 10 Sunderland AFC foreign players of the Stadium of Light era. We've picked a fun one, which I said, of course, excludes people from the British Isles. So first, we had to shorten this list down to 10. And then in today's pod, we're going to be placing those 10 into order from the absolute worst at the top to the slightly less worst at the bottom. I think that sounds right. Anyway, but again, we're doing the Stadium of Light era because actually today it works purely because 99.9% of the foreign players played in that era. So it does. I don't think we're missing too many out by just covering that era. So let us get into the top 10 for us to discuss, because this took some knocking together, I have to admit. This is probably the first one where actually, because we tried to start with a top 10 that I just stick in randomly and then everyone kind of knocks it into shape and pulls people out one by one. This is probably the first one that I put that initial one in and it was just almost dismantled for a couple of reasons. So it was interesting putting it together. So in alphabetical order, I have to clear my throat to talk about these because my voice might just break talking about them. I might kind of break down halfway through here. So you might need to help us. In alphabetical order, we've got Adnan Januzaj, El Hadj Diouf, Abraham Ndong, Josie Altidore, Lawrence de Bock, spoiler alert from earlier, apologies for that, Lilian Lalonde, Papi Djilabodji, Pascal Chimbonda, Ricky Alvarez, and Tor Andre Flo. What are you two laughing at?
Ibrahim Ndong. Is that his son name, is it?
Is that not his name? What's his name like?
Didier Ndong?
Oh, Didier. Oh, of course it is.
I mean, Ibrahim might be his Sunday name. That might be his proper name.
To be fair, if I was him, I'd have used a fake name after that Sunderland spell as well. I'd have hidden my identity at the first possible opportunity.
I'm
just loving the fact that Chris is the one struggling with names today.
Well, it's easy to
Well, that was actually a typo because in the other list I've got it right, and then in the other list I've got it wrong. The list I read out, I've got it wrong. Anyway, well, yeah, he was trying to play, in disguise. That's why.
I think, Chris, we're going to probably give him a few more new names by the end of this episode.
Yeah.
Fair to the lad, so wouldn't worry about it.
Think himself lucky he just got that, but anyway, yes. So that's our top 10 that we've picked, and just some of them to miss out. And I'm going to go through them. Some of these have probably played less than 10 games, but they'd probably deserve a mention anyway. And you lads, please, if I've missed some. We've got, of course, Milton Nunez. He didn't make the criteria, but he just deserves a mention. Tom Peters, Carsten Fredgaard. I always like talking to old fellas in the pub who called him Chocolate Fire Guard.
I was going to say before, that's exactly what my dad and my granddad used to call it.
Yeah, every time. Burnt Horse, we've got Nicholas Medina, Kristen Basilia, Anthony Latalak, William Maquette, Arnau Riera, Christian Riveros, Sully Montari, Angeleri, Kyriakos, Desena. Who else did we think of? Cabral.
A lot of these, by the way, played under 10 games, or they would have probably been on here. So, we've had some real shite.
The centre-half signed from, we had Mika. And I'll leave it as that, to be honest, because it's already... But Gav, I mean, you were particularly vocal in coming up with the top 10 and pulling people out and putting people in and why they should be in there. So who was lucky to miss out?
That's a good question. Who was lucky? Lucky or unlucky? I don't know. I would guess lucky.
Surely they don't want to be on this list, do they?
God. I mean, you're torturing us here by making us think of these bloody names. There were a lot of players in...
You picked the topic.
I did, to be fair. There were a lot of players in the League One era, I think, who, I almost struggled not to put them on there because they weren't just shit, but they were shit in League One. So, and that's, that distinction's important because if you were shit in the Premier League, and you're up against someone who was shit in League One, well, really, the one who was shit in League One's probably a worse player. And the only person, aside from the fact we're doing foreign players today, the only person who qualifies for both is Danny Graham because he was shit in both leagues. But there's a long old list.
Quickly on that, Gav, because actually that's a good point because you're talking levels of football and talent, but we had to. One of the big conversations was weighing up character versus talent because they might have been half decent, but if they just didn't respect the club, that actually brought them into the conversation, didn't it?
Yeah, I mean, having said that, Anthony Letalak probably could have been on there because I think he's someone who didn't really treat the club with any respect, and apparently he was just a complete outcast from the rest of the group when he was here. And Johnny's favourite, Andrea Docena, possibly, but he came in on a free, so I'm a little bit less obvious, less likely to have him on there. You know, I mentioned League One players, Ali Ozturk and Glenn Louvens. I didn't mind Ozturk at times, but he was shit. He just tried his best, didn't he? And Louvens was practically dead by the time we signed him. Leon Diaku played, I didn't realise he played 27 games for us. And Diaku was considering where he came in from, we were expecting a lot more from him. And he, he's kind of looked at his career path now and he's just disappeared. He could have been on there. Bernd Haas is another one who you mentioned before. I never liked him. I just thought he was crap. Just never got it. I remember watching him play in the Champions League after he left us and thinking, how? Christian Bassia was useless in the Premier League, and that season we went down with record points. Louis Saha isn't on there. Louis Saha played 14 games for Sunderland. He was finished by the time we signed him. He was hopeless. He couldn't move. He just stood on the same spot for the full game. But
again, it was crap for a rate. It wasn't. At least he tried. Yeah. He was like, I'm trying, but I'm just too knackered.
Yeah. Roberge, I mean, you mentioned Diakite and Roberge. They were, we signed them and I was thinking, this fella is quite interesting, and he was again just useless. I mean, we could literally be here all night naming these players, but yeah, those were all players who actually played over 10 times. I know you mentioned a few that didn't. I put together a massive list and I made sure they'd all played at least 10 games. We could have done a top 20, and Sunderland have really let themselves down in the transfer market over the years. I mean, it's great to be in a position now where we're quite excited about Sunderland signing players, but for most of my time as a fan, it was like that. We just signed players and they were crap. And you were lucky if 1 in 8 or 9 were any good. I mean, I remember that summer under Di Canio and Di Fanti. I think we signed 15 players, 14 players. And there was only Watmore that we got any value out of, and Manoni, I think. Even Giaccherini was the big name signing that summer, and he done out for us, really. So, yeah, it's been a bit of a theme of Sunderland's past, hasn't it? Just signing utter shite for no reason. But yeah, I mean, the fact we managed to whittle this down to 10's a task. I mean, we could have made a top 20, top 30 easily.
Yeah. Well, I've got a huge, massive list in front of us, and it doesn't make for fun reading. I mean, Johnny, we've talked about this, but we've just touched on that kind of debate between talent and character, and obviously you're looking at the list, and we're looking at the people who missed out. I mean, how much of that is a factor? I mean, does it all go into it? Does it all go into the pot, or are we just purely looking at whether they were crap or not?
It's got to go into it a bit, hasn't it? Because part of why you start to hate certain players is if they're just crap. Like if you just hate watching them, and you every time you see them on the team sheet, you just go, "Oh God, I can't believe he's playing." Then you naturally you're going to start to dislike them. But beyond that, Gav kind of touched on it there. It's like some of them just totally disrespected the club. Now, you could be Lionel Messi, but if you rock up and you can't be asked to turn up to training and you're late to team meetings and you're slagging teammates off or whatever it might be, you're ignoring fans and the list goes on, like all the kind of things that gets people's backs up, then you're probably going to end up on this list as well. So it can't be the only thing. And if we put too much emphasis on ability, then this list would just end up being the 10 foreigners who've played in the Sunderland teams with the lowest league finishes, which would just be boring. That would just be a list where we've gone, we've crunched the numbers and this is what it is. Whereas if, I think the more you include the emotional side and just, to a degree, your own personal biases, it makes it more fun, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not sure I'm using the word fun, but you know what I mean.
Fun used in the loosest possible sense of the term there.
Okay, I'll take your word for it. We'll see how it goes. But Andrew, I mean, again, I'll put the question to you. Were there any of those that you were fighting for that missed out that you just thought they have to be on there?
Well, I was quite fortunate in that I missed a lot of the discussions because I had some work to do, and I was pleased to be well out of it. I'm surprised he hasn't been name checked yet, though. I thought Stephen Pienaar was a good shout. We did mention him in the discussion.
Yes,
he could have very well been in there.
Just very quickly there, does he not, what Chris mentioned before about, like when I said Sahar and it was like, he was finished by that. Is Pienaar not in that bracket? He was just finished by the time we signed him.
How rude do I want to be?
We're just getting warmed up on this podcast.
Yeah, I don't think it was just a case of him being finished. I think it was a case of him couldn't be bothered. But this is where I'm slightly different to you, Gavin, that you're saying, well, if you're crap in League One, you're objectively worse than someone who's crap in the Premier League. I actually think, well, if you're in League One, there's an argument to say that you might be a more limited player anyway. I think if you've got yourself a deal to a Premier League club, there's certain standards expected of you. You must have shown at some point that you were good enough. So, I think if you get a gig at Sunderland in the Premier League and you play as bad as some of these did, I think it's almost... I think it's pathetic. I did start this thinking I was going to be all very even-handed and say things like, it's hard to settle into a team, or it's difficult when you move to a new area. And I was going to give all the players excuses as to why they've ended up on this list. But then when you start getting through the names and you particularly start getting to the ones at the top, you think, actually, no, it's nothing to do with that. They were just wrong-uns, some of them,
Well, that's it. I mean, some of the conversations we've had, because, we're talking about some players who played at the top level for us, and we've missed out players like, some of them didn't make the criteria, but you're the likes of the Glenn Louvens, the likes of Alan Ozturk, Leon Diaku, who actually weren't world beaters at League One. And if you're just doing it on pure talent, and some of the players in the top 10, or in the worst 10 that we've got, are just simply better players than the ones that we've missed out.
Weren't world beaters is a ridiculously kind description of Louvens, Ozturk and Diaku, mind.
But in League One, exactly.
Yeah. No, I take the point. But I think this links back actually to Pienaar as well. I wanted to just chime in on that because for me, it's what they represent. Like Pienaar coming in, he was already over the hill and finished. It's not his fault he was shit, but he represented that lazy, couldn't be arsed, like giving up from day one vibe that Moyes brought to the place. It was like, I can't be arsed for this really, so I'll just get Pienaar in because he's played for us before. I'm sure he'll do something, and that permeated the whole season. Whereas somebody like, Louvens, you could maybe argue as well, and Ozturk, in the sense that they were there when we'd just gone into League One, but nobody was. We knew we needed to just fill the squad with a load of people overnight, basically. So all of us were kind of like, well, at least we've got players. Like, at least we can start the season. Whereas the Pienaar one, we just had Big Sam, the last transfer window, we'd signed Kazri and Kirchhoff and Kone and that. So the overall feeling you get is just horrendous, I think, when you think back to players like Pienaar. Whereas Louvens and that, I just look at them and I think like, well, you were shit, but we knew you were going to be shit, and that was the end of the story for me. So just a long-winded way of saying, fuck David Moyes and Pienaar was rubbish.
I just can't stop staring at this list, to be honest. Loire, Doi, Histari, Skorgo, Mavrias. Anyway, let's get into it because I'm just getting lost in this. But it is interesting that we've taken 25 minutes to talk about why we think all these players are absolute shit. But let's get into our top 10s because, to be fair, we've got quite a few aligned compared to the previous lists. But we still have one player who's third and he's eighth, so there's plenty of debate to come, and they can argue why this player was as shit as he was, or maybe not as shit as the others. But remember that the lads don't know where the others have placed them, so they're finding out others' choices for the first time. So let's start with you, Gav. Can you give us your countdown from 10 up to 6, please?
Yes, and this is weird, isn't it? Because we're doing a worst list. So technically, the one who's 10th, I think, is the best of those players.
Yes,
I'm even uncomfortable saying that, to be honest. But in 10th place, I have Pascal Chimbonda. 9th, El Hadj Diouf. 8th, I have Adnan Januzaj. 7th is Torre Andre Flo. And in 6th place is Josie Altidore.
Now, let's go straight to that. I want to say bottom of the pile, but let's go to the least worst. Because actually, I was slightly surprised, actually, Gav, with this one. Because again, this comes into this debate, and this is going to run throughout the whole thing: the character versus actual talent, and what type of player he was. Because look, he was like one of the top fullbacks, I think, in the Premier League with Wigan and Spurs. And for me, though, Gav, I've got him. It's maybe a bit harsh, I don't know, but him and Diouf, to me, brackets almost the end of Roy Keane.
Yeah. He was, as you said, he was signed and he was a top player, and somebody who there had been murmurings of issues with him at Tottenham, but had demonstrated over a bunch of years that in the Premier League that he was good enough. So having had the season we just had where we'd stayed up, it was like, right, we need to sign a bracket of player up from what we've had. And he was viewed as that. And it was almost, when I was putting this list together, I was trying to justify, like, why is he not as bad as him, and why is he not as bad as him, and et cetera, et cetera. And with me, and we'll come on to Diouf at some point, but with him and Chimbonda, they did play well against Newcastle, and for some reason that dominates my thoughts when I'm thinking about them. They had good games against Newcastle. I remember I was at, I think it was Fulham away, when we had a goal disallowed because of Chimbonda grabbing someone's knob in the wall, which was a particular highlight. Was that not when Richardson had scored a carbon copy of the Mags free kick, but like a week or two before, and it got disallowed? It was the week before. In that game, he also took a free kick which hit the post 3 times. So it hit one post, went across, hit the other, hit Mark Schwarzer on the back, and hit the post again. And we drew 0-0.
Should have seen it coming, man.
Yeah, that was also the same day that they wheeled out Jimmy Hill on the pitch and the fans tried to kill him. That was all in one day. I was at that game. Just a really bizarre. Also had Fulham fans sat next to us in that random away end where they're all mixed and stuff. So but Chimbonda, he did play that game when we broke the hoodoo, the 28 years without a win at Sunderland against Newcastle. He played well in that game, so that's the only thing I can really give him. Otherwise, he was a complete dick. I mean, I've been to talk-ins with Niall Quinn before, where he's talked about Chimbonda, and he tells a story about him coming up to Niall Quinn on the training ground with his pay packet in his hand, and he dropped it at his feet and said, "Boss, pay packet too light," because he'd been fined that many times. He was a big-time Charlie when he was a proper arsewipe. And weirdly, Chimbonda is, I think, I might be wrong on this, but he was up until recently living in the Northeast still and playing local non-league football. He was playing for like Washington in the Wearside League and things like that. I don't understand why he's got kids or whatever, a relationship up here. I don't know. But yeah, just he wasn't the right character for Sunderland. I don't know. It's strange, isn't it, when you consider who signed him? Because him and Roy Keane, there's not a chance in hell they got on. Like, I just don't understand that signing whatsoever. Keane tells a story in his book about not signing Robbie Savage because he had a voicemail message where he was doing the WhatsApp thing, and he was like, "That's it. I just don't want to sign him." So he if he didn't get a good first impression of somebody, he wouldn't sign them. But then he went out and signed players like Diouf and Chimbonda, who were not. You would never ever match them as characters. So I just don't understand the signing, other than the fact he was coming from Tottenham and had a bit pedigree, but cost us a lot of money. Pissed about when he was here was constant. The reason that he did that, drop the pay packet in front of Niall Quinn, he was late for training every single day. Always late for training, didn't give a shit. Proper big time Charlie, as I said. And yeah, I mean, I'm talking about a lot of things here which didn't involve on the pitch. I think on the pitch he was okay, wasn't horrendous, but you cannot ignore how much of a prick he was. And that's why he's on the top 10 list. I mean, we just spent 20 odd minutes talking about people who didn't make it, and he's on here, and it's mainly because of that.
It's really strange when you say that out loud, though, Gav, that he did that under Roy Keane. How did he get away with that? And
I know.
I mean, to be fair though, he played, I think it was 16 games he ended up playing for Sunderland, and he was booted out the next year. And Johnny, you've also got him in 8th. And was it purely the gloves for you that you just couldn't get past that?
Yeah, and again, this is turned into me talking about my dad podcast, but he's another one of them who every time he sees a player wearing gloves, he'll not be happy. But especially if he sees a player in like short sleeves and gloves, he'll go absolutely mental about it. So yeah, like at a young, impressionable age, I just had my dad every time we go at the match like, bloody Chimbonda wearing gloves again. What a bloody southern softie. So he already wasn't endeared to us massively. And then you add on all the stuff about, being a bit of a prick behind the scenes and mouthing off to Quinn about his pain. That's like, come on, mate. You were off to a loser with the gloves. Don't make it worse by starting to get fined every week. But as well, I mean, on a more serious note, like, he does represent a bit of a clique of players who were around at that time, doesn't he? Who you just got the feeling, which obviously proved right in hindsight, that they did think like, oh, we're doing these lot a bit of a favour turning up here. Sunderland are back in the Premier League. Oh, go on then. If you're going to chuck us 30 grand a week, I'll come and bless you with me presence for a couple of seasons. Which is just from day one is the total wrong attitude to have as a Sunderland player. Like, we all bang on about it all the time, don't we? We just want people who are committed and actually, give half a shit and want to play for the club. And yeah, Chimbonda was just one of those, along with the likes of Diouf and plenty of others who've walked through the front doors at the Academy of Light over that sort of 10-year spell in the Premier League, who you just knew they were looking down the noses at us. Which, yeah, that kind of attitude to me is just unacceptable. And, unfortunately, you could have made a lot longer than a top 10 just of players with that attitude. But yeah, add the gloves on top and Chimbonda cracks the top 10 for me, no bother.
Yeah, when I hear Pascal Chimbonda's name, I always think that was the beginning of the end for Roy Keane, and can't quite understand it. But let's move on. Andrew, we're going to move on to you, and can we have your rundown from 10 up to 6, please?
Yes, number 10 was Laurens de Bock. Number 9 was where I put Pascal Chimbonda. 8, Lilian Laslan or Laslandes. Cut out whichever pronunciation of that is wrong. Just cut that out for us, please, Chris. 7, Ricky Alvarez, and 6, Josie Altidore.
Yes, well, no prizes for who we're going to get to start off with, because we're going to start off with the one that you or me probably can't say very well, Lilian Lalonde. Maybe, or Les Landes, or whatever variation people might like, because you've got him in 8th. Now, it's an interesting one, this one, because he had a tough job on his hands, because Quinny was coming to the end of his career. Kevin Phillips was still trying to do what he was trying to do, trying to find a new way of playing, because he wasn't getting the flick-ons from Quinny, and Quinn was in and out, injured. You could tell he was coming to the end. I mean, in hindsight, and I remember we were linked at the time, I think the timing didn't work out. But if we'd brought in Peter Crouch at that point when he was young, I think he went to Villa around that time in the end. But yeah, he brought in, and there's a story that Bob Murray tells in his book, doesn't he, when he goes to the races and he's talking to Bobby Saxton at the races, and he's talking about this new signing, and Bobby Saxton turns around to him and he asks about this new French fella, and Bobby Saxton says he's no good. He's crap. And he's already been there 2 minutes. But, like, to be fair, anyone would struggle to fill the boots of Niall Quinn at the time. But Lilian Lalonde struggled to fill the shoes of an actual striker, to be fair.
Yeah, he was. To look at him, you thought he had a bit of presence about him. I think he was quite broad-shouldered and what have you. But he was pretty weak on the pitch. I think a bit like Johnny said with Stephen Pienaar, kind of just embodied an era and a certain mood within the club. For me, Big Lil, as I'm going to call him, that sounds a little bit easier to pronounce. I think he just is the epitome of Reed's golden touch in the transfer market, just completely deserting him. Because Reed had done really well in the transfer market, but then when he started buying players in from the continent, they were just not up to the standard. And Lalonde just did not fit in. I'm not surprised Bobby Saxton had doubts about him from early on.
Yeah. I mean, but yeah, just looking at this, because Gav, look, and it's kind of not spoiling anything, but I don't want to spoil anything. We'll hear your top 5, but he just squeaks into your top 5. So you actually, Andrew saying I came in, he was absolutely shit, but you're saying, Andrew's only got him a trick. I keep trying to work out that this is back to front, because Andrew had him in 8th. You've got him up there in 5th. So you're saying, actually, this fella was absolutely shite. 13 games, 1 goal, And if you look at his record before he signed, I mean, the season before he'd scored 4 and 22. And, you know, even the seasons before then, he played over 30 games and never scored more than 15 goals. So he didn't exactly come with a goal scoring record. And when he came, I mean, I remember him falling over the ball and all sorts. He couldn't even hold the ball up. And it was, I mean, timing's everything for a player, but he just didn't look like a striker.
No, he didn't. He was useless. And when you think for the time, 3.6 million quid was a lot of money still, you know, at the time, that was a lot of money for a club like Sunderland to spend. And yeah, he maybe wasn't in his prime, but he was still 30-year-old. So we weren't exactly signing someone who was completely over the hill. And, you know, he'd had caps and scored goals playing for France at a time when they were the world champions. So, you know, you're expecting a little bit more, aren't you, from somebody who's done that? Yeah, he didn't play loads and loads for France, but I'm just looking here. He played 7 times, scored 3 goals. So, you know, that was at a time when they were the best team in the world, and he was getting caps for France. So he was obviously, a couple of years prior, still a very decent player. And I don't know what happened to him. I don't think we've ever had the full story, but he just wasn't good enough. He was nowhere near Niall Quinn. I still would have preferred carting out Quinny with crutches than playing him. He was terrible, absolutely shocking. And, you know, he kind of just creeps in because he only played a handful of games, really, you know, 12, I think it was 12 league appearances for us. Got the 1 goal away at Chef Wed in the League Cup. But yeah, just Lilian Laslandes is somebody who, as soon as you think of worst players Sunderland have had, he springs to mind, doesn't he? He just does. And there's another name on this list from that time, obviously Torre Andre Flo, who we'll come on to at some point, who also failed to replace Niall Quinn. It was a real problem for the football club, trying to find someone who could do the same job Quinny did. And he wasn't up to it. I mean, he was that bad, we released him from his deal early to get rid of him because the club were just like, we need to cut our losses on this guy. I mean, he lasted 2 minutes. He had a couple of loans away. You know, never really amounted to much on either of those occasions. And by the time he came back for pre-season, Mick McCarthy was in charge. He didn't want him. The club didn't want him. They just binned him off. And I you know, as I put this list together, I was thinking sort of, where did we get the most value for money or the least value for money out of some of these players? And I think for the time, if adjusted for inflation, what's 3.6 million now? About 15 million maybe in terms of transfer fees. I mean, he was still, you know, it was a big outlay for us. We weren't spending big money on players.
Such a strange signing.
Yeah, very strange signing. Like, you know, you don't even understand. I can't understand where that came from. I mean, we've had this conversation a few times on these top tens. Peter Reid made some bizarre signings where you look at it and you go, who put him in touch with him? Where did that recommendation come from? We can't have scouted him. Did they just look at him and say, well, he's got a canny scoring record in France and he's played for France and scored goals for France, he'll do. I would love to know more about that deal, but we'll never know. Reedy's never going to. One of the things when he does his interviews, Reedy, he doesn't like to talk too much about the shit signings he made, and he kind of brushes past them very quickly, doesn't he? And the only one he ever really gives any airtime to is Milton Nunez because he can't avoid it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would love to know more about that one. It was just such, as you just said, a really strange signing.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to replace someone like Niall Quinn, even. But yeah, Andrew, it was just a really strange time, wasn't it?
It was a strange time. He didn't fit in. Just get my usual caveat in. Just because I've got him at 8 instead of Gav in 5th, I think it was. That doesn't mean I'm saying he was a good player or anything. It's just, don't have me pinned down as some sort of fan of his. I remember him. There was apparently reports of him being unhappy in the area. I think he got done for drink driving and he failed to turn up in court. Now, you might have to cut that bit out if that turns out to be rubbish. So, yeah, he didn't fit into the area. I'm sure he was driving like in the middle of the night just round the streets of Newcastle, just kind of like aimlessly, a bit like the way he played, just not really knowing what he was doing. And, bless him. It didn't, it's fair to say it didn't work out. And yeah, it was. It was a strange time. The club were changing, or the club needed to change, and Reid wasn't able to get the players in to do that.
Again, actually, Andrew, just very quickly, we were saying about, in my mind, Chimbonda signals almost the beginning and the end for Roy Keane. Lillian Leslans he signals the beginning and the end for Peter Reid for me, in my mind. It was like, that's where it started.
Yeah.
And people sometimes go back to the sale of Don Hutchison as well, but for me, it's this. It's not replacing Quinn and Phillips.
Now, this genuinely doesn't bother me, but did Lalonde have his ears pierced with these brash earrings? Yeah. And again, I just think if you turn up on the training ground looking like that, not willing to put yourself about, I think you're going to very quickly end up on the wrong side of Peter Reid. He didn't listen, like I say, I'm not judging, do what you want with your ears. I couldn't give a nick. But Peter Reid didn't have I covered myself enough there, lads? I don't want to. I don't want to be upsetting anybody unnecessarily. But I can just see how Reid would very quickly lose patience with the type of character he came across as.
I'm surprised he got past the first meeting with Peter Reid, but anyway,
well, it goes back to what I said. Did he know who he was signing?
Yeah.
You know, and we done our homework. I don't think he mustn't have. He mustn't have.
Yeah, but anyway, look, we've got a lot of other crap to talk about, so let's move on, because Johnny, we need your 10 up to your 6, please.
Certainly. So 10, Lalonde. 9, Tore-André Flo. 8, Pascal Chimbonda. 7, Laurens de Bock. And 6, El Hadj Diouf.
Now, we've already mentioned him a couple of times, but I'm going to go in with Laurens de Bock in 7th. I mean, God, Johnny. I mean, Laurens de Bock. But again, in my mind, it's funny because the way my mind works, as soon as I hear a player, it associates me with something like straight away. And some players, you think of a game, a goal. With Chimbonda, it's like, oh, well, he was the end of Roy Keane in my head. Lalonde's end of Peter Reid in my head. Laurens de Bock is in a little bracket with McFadden as basically the laws of the League One era.
Yeah, and if this list wasn't constrained by they have to be foreign, McFadden would be 1 to 10 on my list, would just be him. So thanks for bringing him up. But yeah, no, de Bock is similar for me. He, in my head, just immediately brings the absolute worst days of League One straight to the fore. And a lot of players, like you say, for good or for bad, you hear their name, you might think of a game, a particularly good game they had, a particularly bad game, a moment, they've gifted a goal away, they've give a penalty away, they've been sent off or whatever. De Bock, for me, all I picture is him in that god-awful kit where they'd had to change the sponsor and bloody paste one over top, in his signing, unveiling, again, in the loosest sense of the word unveiling. It's way too grand for him, but all I can picture is him, like, holding a shit £2 football from the club shop in that awful home top with a pair of jeans on, and just thinking, like, what are we doing? Like, who is this guy and why are we pretending anybody cares we've signed him? And then I think, didn't he only just scrape in terms of number of games played for this list as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, 10. Literally, he had 10.
And I think he's done bloody well to play 10 times for Sunderland, even that edition.
2 a sub. 8 and 2 a sub.
How has he started 8 games for Sunderland, man? Never give up, guys. You can still achieve your dreams one day. If de Bock's getting 8 starts for Sunderland, we can all make it.
Do you remember how we signed him? He came in on deadline day and he was about 8th choice. We tried. Yeah. We just needed a left back. We were like, we need a left back. We tried to sign something like 7 or 8 players before. It was like, oh, you can have him. Leeds didn't want him. And Leeds, he regularly features on lists like this with Leeds fans. They class him as one of their worst ever players. And and that, of course, was enough to attract Sunderland.
He's there,
what he can do for us.
Yeah, but and until we signed Sirkin in the League One days, we'd went through a horrible run of having utter dross at left back, hadn't we? It felt like every window we were like, the likes of Jake Vokins and McFadden and people like that, and de Bock and, Brendan Galloway in the Championship as well. Like, we just seemed like, I know we couldn't attract many good players full stop, but whatever it was, we must have been laying poison down on that part of the stadium of light turf, like, because we just couldn't get one.
No, it's quite funny. He got released by Leeds. He'd been on loan in Poland. So he had like a long 2-year loan in Poland. And end of his contract, Leeds released him. And the team he'd been with, Zulte Waregem, they signed him. I don't know if there was some sort of obligation or whatever, but he was signed permanently. And within a month, they got rid of him on a free transfer to a Greek team. So,
well, I mean, that just tells you everything you need to know about.
Yeah, he was appalling. He was shocking. He was. I mean, you said it. I mean, I can remember the way he was revealed, and I imagine if you go back and listen to anything I said or wrote at the time, I probably tried to make best of it and try to say like, oh well, you know, you look his pedigree, he's played for Leeds, you know, played 100-odd games for Club Brugge, can't be that bad. He could.
All right, Mick Mac. He reminds me of a really crap version of Hjelde without the vibes. Like, left back signed from Leeds, never expected much of him, doesn't get many games. But at least Hjelde's fun. You know, at least when he comes on, he's got that record, he never concedes goals. De Bock was just depressing.
Well, just to bring Andrew in on this, because with the way this is inverted, you've got him as the best on this list, Andrew, down in 10th.
Well, like I say, I thought he was featuring in our Legends episode, so something's gone wrong. I know that as soon as I start speaking, I'm
okay. I'll ask you a question, Andrew. What makes him better than all of the other players we've got on the list?
He did less damage for us than the rest of them.
But you've just heard the anguish in Johnny's voice when he's talking about what he represents.
I fully get that. And earlier on in the pod, for the first time in my life, somebody mentioned a name, and I saw Johnny look cross. He didn't. I don't even think he realised he did it. His face just switched, and I was like, "Oh, Johnny's got a bit of a side to him there." Like, no, Lawrence de Bock did struggle for us, but I think he came. I'm going to defend him here, unbelievably. I think he came in on the back of injuries. Confidence was rock bottom, but the club were rubbish anyway. We were going nowhere when he joined, and when he got shipped back out, we were still going nowhere. Everybody else actually had a part to play in our demise, whereas he kind of just came in and out. He didn't improve the situation. He didn't look good. But he didn't make matters worse, which is damning with faint praise, I know. Low cost as well, low cost. Unlike some of these ones where the figures are absolutely eye-watering, I don't think we will have paid a loan fee. I don't think we will have given him much in the way of wages. So, yeah, like I say, the damage, the least rubbish of the lot for me.
Well, I never thought the outcome of this podcast would be someone defending Lawrence de Bock, but there you go. You did a really good argument there.
All I would remind people is I'm a family man. I've got kids, so please, if you see us in the street, please just go easy on us.
How many kids? Is it 6?
Yeah.
Andrew's got some sort of fetish for the League One era, I think, because you think of his placing of some of these characters on his lists. I think he quite enjoyed the misery of League One.
Yeah, that's all this has ever been, lads. You've finally worked it out.
He's been Stockholm syndromed by Lee Johnson et al.
And I'm actually fuming that we're getting ready for the Premier League season. I think it's a disgrace the way this club has gone.
That's it, Andrew. The beauty is in the struggle, isn't it, Andrew? But moving swiftly on from Lawrence de Bock, let's move on to Tor Andre Flo, Gav, and I want to bring him to you. You mentioned him earlier. You've got him 7th in your list, so plenty above him that you thought, actually, you know, he came in and actually, to be fair, I mean, look, again, we talked about the loans in terms of the timing, and he was brought in alongside Marcus Stewart to be the new Quinn Phillips, and everyone thought, right, this is the point. We have to replace them two. We've brought these two big players in. Marcus Stewart had done it for Ipswich. Tor Andre Flo, we'd seen him play for Chelsea. We knew he was talented. I think he kind of went off the radar a little bit at Rangers. Came in, played 33 games and scored 6 goals. So you're talking, 1 in 5 ratio, which isn't great, not fantastic, not completely awful either. We've had much worse. But I think it was what he represented at the time, wasn't he, in terms of that big outlay?
Yeah, it was. I try and transport back that time. I remember I was on holiday. I was only a kid. I remember being on holiday with my family and we played Man U, and I think that might be his debut, or it was close to the start of his time, and he scored. I think we drew 1s each or 2s each. I can't remember now. But I remember thinking then, like, oh, there we go. Big money signing, just came in, hit the ground running, looked absolutely fine. And then, we just very rapidly realised why Rangers were happy to let go of him, I think. Look, Scotland back then, I think the standard was a little bit better than it probably is now. And if you played for Rangers at that time, you could possibly still cut it. I mean, we signed Claudio Reyna, for instance, who did a very good job for us. I think Mikel Arteta was there around that time, so who went on to have a good Premier League career. So, it wasn't like what it would probably be now if Sunderland went and spent 7 million on a Rangers player. People would be like, what they're doing? But yeah, he just didn't do it, did he? I mean, you mentioned his goal record there. I'm pretty sure 2 of those goals were against Cambridge in the cup, though. So maybe his record isn't as good as it looks. They were either in what would it be at the time, 2nd division or 3rd division at the time.
I think we beat them 7-1 as well. I think, didn't we?
He
7-0.
Gav again saying that if he'd played, he would have scored a hat-trick against Cambridge. Just writing off a game against a professional team again.
Well, I think I've spoke about that game before on here, but I watched it on teletext unfold. It was a midweek game. There was no other way to get the coverage of it. So every time the page refreshed, we'd scored another goal, and it was the game before Peter Reid got the sack.
But it was his last win as Sunderland manager.
It was his last win, yeah. So yeah, that one always sticks out in my mind. I can remember his name coming up on the screen. Torrey Andre Flo had scored, but that didn't happen too often that season. And yeah, he wasn't good enough. He played one game the following season after relegation in the cup, and then was shipped off and played quite a lot of football after he left us, which surprised us. I remember him turfing up at Leeds. Do you remember that? I think he played for Leeds as well in League One. That was the season I'm just looking now. That was the season we were back in the Premier League. But I mean, Torrey Andre Flo for me, when I see the names above him in my list in terms of 1st to 6th, it purely came down to I just didn't like them players. I liked them players less than I liked him, but I still thought Torrey Andre Flo was a load of shit. He was done by the time like I say, I'm surprised he played as much as he did after he left us, because he looked flogged. If Quinny was ready to retire, then so was he. That's how he looked. He was shite.
Yeah. And someone might correct us on this, but again, I'm sure I'm almost positive there's a story in Bob Murray's book, because he was good mates with, and I can't remember the guy's first name, but Murray, the chairman at Rangers. David, I think it was. Yeah, I think it was. And he was good mates with him, and he almost fell out with him after he realised that he'd basically been done over by Cell. And I think there was a conversation where he basically said, "You've done me over there," and he said, "Well, Chelsea did us over, and now I've done you over," and that's how it works, basically. If
you look at his record, though, Chris, he had a really, really good season in our first season in the Premier League after the promotion with the record points. So I'm looking now, he scored 19 goals in 57 games that season. So not only did he play virtually every game in every cup competition, he was he was one of the first names on the team sheet for Chelsea. Following season, didn't play so much, and then got a move to Rangers, looking at it halfway through the season or whatever. And he had 2 seasons there in Scotland where he scored a few, but obviously
in where, sorry, Gav?
In Scotland.
In Scotland, okay.
What do you think I said?
Well, it's Scotland, isn't it? I mean, like you said, Andrew's already said, again, your next sentence is, I could score, what was it, 18 goals and 30 goals.
If you just stand in the 6-yard box and tap them in, it can't be too hard, can it?
I think at that time he might have had bloody Loudrup on one side, or whoever it was, and bloody hell.
You wonder what went wrong, though. Again, season before we sign him, he gets 25 goals in 46 games. All right, in Scotland, whatever. But he'd still done pretty well. And then we sign him this following summer. He plays 4 games for Rangers and doesn't score. So between the end of the season before and him signing for Sunderland, clearly they'd looked at him and gone, he's done him, like. And then we've come along with, what was it, 7 million quid or whatever it came to?
More than that, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was expensive. So we did get done over. I think it's the fee, isn't it? If we'd get him for 1 or 2 million, he might not be on this list because, he played quite a lot for us in the Premier League that season. So he might not have made the list. We were talking about Letalek, for instance. He got 4 goals and played virtually every game that season. But he came in on loan, and that's maybe why he's not on here. I think it's the fee when it comes to Torre Andre Flo. It's that coupled with the fact he was shit.
And the expectation, I think.
Yeah, that's it too, yeah. And we got relegated with him in the team. So that always plays a part, doesn't it? But weirdly though, when I think, I've got a bit of anger attached to some of these names. With him, I don't. I kind of just associate him with being shite, and it didn't work, and we spent a lot of money. But I'm not like let's say, for instance, if he was still playing and he came to the stadium like next week, I don't think he wouldn't be one of these players that got booed off the pitch. Where with a lot of these names, you can imagine it being a bit more aggressive if they were spotted in Sunderland again and people not notice them, and they might get a few comments thrown their way. Don't think there's that anger attached to Torre Andre Flo. I mean, maybe it's just me, but 7th on my list.
Well, there we'll see, because Andrew, I want a bit of context for your next two. Can we have your top 5, please?
Yes. Well, it was Torre Andre Flo at 5, 4, El Hadj Diouf, 3, Adnan Januzaj, 2, Didier Ndong, and number 1, Papi Djilabodji.
Yes. Torre Andre Flo in 5th. So you hold a little bit more hatred for them in your heart than Gav did.
I think Gav said there that if he turned up at Sunderland now, he wouldn't get booed. I think probably just because people wouldn't even notice he was on a pitch, because he was just anonymous for us. Lilian Lislones was perhaps the sign that reads transfer dealings, and he'd lost the magic touch. Torre Andre Flo was like a last desperate roll of the dice, and just completely anonymous on the pitch. And again, I think because I'd known of how good he'd been previously, I was expecting a lot more from him. So that's why, in my mind, he's more of a disappointment, I'm afraid.
Yeah. Okay, and we'll go straight into the next one I want to speak to you about from your top 5, because you've got El Hadj Diouf in 4th. Now, yes. I just want to ask you, because I had kind of him and Chimbonda almost together. I struggle to split them. Now, you've got Diouf way higher in 4th than Pascal Chimbonda, who's down in 9th.
Yeah, I've surprised myself a little bit with that one. Now I think about it.
Explain that, Andrew.
They are very similar in that they both came in the same summer, and I think Sabrija, once he'd replaced Roy Keane, shipped them out virtually as quickly as he could, because there were such bad influences in the dressing room. The reason Diouf was worse for me was he wasn't just I think I've said an arsewipe, which is a lovely, I've not heard that that word for a long time. Diouf, I thought, was nasty as well. Some of the accusations of some of the things he did, some of the things he definitely did playing for other teams, like the spitting and what have you. Just a deeply unpleasant man, and you sometimes learn to ignore those attributes if they're doing it on the pitch. But he didn't even do it on the pitch for us. He was an established Premier League player who'd been really popular at Bolton, and he just didn't out for us. So yeah, he's high up my list. And like I say, my top 4 or 5, it's that double header of not a good player, but also questionable as a person.
Yeah. I mean, Johnny, you've got him in 6th, and, listening to Andrew there, yeah, it's really strange now thinking back that Roy Keane went for him. And I remember Roy Keane saying at the time that he wanted a bit more edge to Sunderland's side, but still an odd signing. And, like I say, you've got him sixth. And actually, interestingly, in terms of when the averages come out, Johnny, you've got all of the top five, although in a different order, in the top five, and all the bottom five in the bottom five, although in a different order when it comes to the averages. So, but like I said, he just misses out on your top five. Does he maybe get off a bit lightly?
Well, no, because obviously I get the fives right. So whatever I say, obviously that goes. No, I think Juice's one of them where a little bit like, I can't remember whether it was Andrew or Gav who said it now. I'm so sorry, but you were talking about like if you can't associate a player specifically with us going on a slide, they sometimes do get away with it in your mind. There are some players who are front and centre in your brain for relegations, the double relegation, especially those kind of times. When they become a bit of a figurehead, they kind of take on the sins of the rest of the group in a sense. Whereas Juve, I think, does get away with it a bit, and probably a little bit in my list as well, just because we still were just about going in the right direction. While he was here and then for maybe a year or two afterwards, or, there or thereabouts, we weren't exactly on a massive rise, but, we weren't getting relegated. We weren't actively sliding down. So, yeah, I think Juve he kind of just hides behind the better players in the squads he was in to a degree. But I think as a bloke, it's just a horrible piece of work. Odious, cocky, arrogant, aggressive, violent. I mean, just everything you don't want to be associated with as a person, he was associated with. The kind of behaviour that goes past, you can get away with going on like that if you're scoring hat-tricks every week, to the point where you're like, nah, you just don't want this guy anywhere near your football club. And the fact that he was once viewed as a step up for Sunderland is just a shame, really. I think he's just the kind of player you want to erase from your history if you can. You just want him gone. You don't want to think about him again. You're like, Choof, he was crap. He was horrible. He worked himself, and he was a waste of time and money. Just get him gone.
Yeah, it's amazing a thing, Andrew, that we signed him when you guys talk about him like that.
Well, with Gav, when he mentioned Chimbonda earlier, and he said, I'm not sure why Keane went for him. I think with him, it was kind of some sort of multi-buy offer from Spurs. You buy Steve Malbrank and we'll throw in Chimbonda and Timu Tainio at the same time. Whereas, yeah, Juve was like a bit of a star name at Bolton, and we were desperate to get him. Like Johnny says, Juve was he was a worky ticket. And yet, for all of this about he comes across as this horrible guy, there is something in my mind that back home, he's like Mr. Charity, and he has all of these foundations and all of these good deeds he does. And then you just think, why, when he comes over here and plays football, does he turn into just an absolute piece of work? I can't. A bit like when we said with Chimbonda, it was a bit of a surprise that he went into non-league football and played on for a long time after his senior career. With Juve, I can't marry up this person who is such a revered figure back in his home country, and yet we can all think of incidents where he's spat on players, he's spat on fans, he's apparently threatened people with knives. I mean, what's going on in the guy's head?
Yeah. Well, just very quickly bring you in, Gav, because to be fair, you had him ninth. So, like, you're saying, compared to others on this list, he's not so bad, and he played well against the Mags. And I mean, do you kind of remove some of the stuff that Johnny and Andrew were talking about?
Not really. It really did just come down to the fact he had a good game against Newcastle. He was mint in that game, by the way. He was probably man of the match.
Everything. I mean, he could have been like, a matchman or whatever. Played well against the Mags. It's
exactly.
Fine.
However, let's be honest, that is the type of game.
Get out a jail-free card for Sunderland.
Yeah.
Play well against the Mags.
That is the type of game he's perfect for, though, isn't it? Because I remember every time he touched the ball, you could just hear the Mags booing him. And he loves all that, and he fed off that. Like, seriously, that's the only reason I've got him 9th and Chimbonda 10th, is they played well against Newcastle. I remember when we signed him as well, being really excited I was excited about this signing, and like we knew the baggage he came with, but still there was that thing there. Was like, he is a good player though. He'd done well for Bolton, done pretty well for Liverpool. We were like, he could be good for us. And if you transport your mind back to that time, like the summer before that window we signed him in, we hadn't signed any superstars. We basically just raided the Championship. So it did feel like a step up in terms of quality of what we'd signed, and we were signing players who were a little bit better than what we had at the club already, and he definitely hit that bracket. This is another one of those where it doesn't just come down to ability, it comes down to he was just a prick. And, that Mags game aside, he didn't out really. I remember him starting pretty well. He played like wide right, didn't he? So he was playing out wide rather than, I think he spent a bit of his career playing as a striker and things like that, but we played him out wide. And I remember him starting very well and looking pretty promising, but it deteriorated quickly. Clearly wasn't a fit for the club, or he joined a group which was very well meshed. They'd got promoted together. They'd stayed up together. There was a good bond in the group. And then you bring in people like this who are complete outsiders, total different attitude and outlook on the way things are. And was a big time Charlie like Chimbonda. And he was never going to fit in. And I mean, we packed him off pretty quickly. We signed him at the end of July, and by January he was gone, and he was at Blackburn. And I think it was Allardyce who was the manager there, wasn't it? And Allardyce was probably the manager who got the most out of Juve through his career. I mean, even at Blackburn, he did very well for Allardyce. And then once Allardyce left Blackburn and a new manager came in, they didn't see eye to eye, and he got packed off again. So it's something which followed Juve right through his career. Yeah, a good player who probably should have done. When you look at it, because can you remember when he kind of emerged the 2002 World Cup when Senegal had a really good tournament?
Yeah,
and that's what got him a move.
Didn't they beat France in the opening game? I think.
Yeah, they were. I can remember that tournament like it was yesterday, and Senegal were brilliant. And if there was 6 or 7 of that squad got moves to England off the back of the performance in that tournament, and he got his big move to Liverpool. I mean, first season with Liverpool, he played 47 games. So when you look at his career, yes, he played a lot in the Premier League. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 seasons in the Premier League, Al-Hadj Diouf. But yet, you remember him for all the wrong reasons. So yeah, that's why he's on the list. I mean, lasted 2 minutes, stinking attitude, threatened to stab someone, arsehole. That's why he's there.
Yep. And you still have, 8 players above him. So anyway, let's move on.
Hey, if we were doing a top 10 arseholes, he'd probably be top.
Well, we need Johnny's top 5 now.
So 5, Adnan Januzaj. 4, Josie Altidore. 3, Ricky Alvarez. 2, Papi Djilabodji. And 1, Didier and Dong. And my God, just reading that, I had like out-of-body experience there. Like, what are we doing here? These names are horrible.
Well, let's go into your 4th placed Josie Altidore, because we've just been talking about Diouf, and we've mentioned Chimbonda as well, who you've got Altidore above. You've got Diouf in 6th, you've got Chimbonda down in 8th. But my argument is that, look, Altidore was, I don't know, how to say this. He was limited in what he could do. But I tell you what, he grafted, and you knew he cared, and you knew he wanted it. Yet, so you've just purely gone, right, just talent-wise, he's higher up on the list than the likes of Diouf and Chimbonda, who just couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, he's an exception, I think, to my general approach has been context and dickheadery gets you higher up the list. Ability is less the thing, but come on, man. Watching Josie every week became genuinely painful, at points. I mean, I remember, was it Cardiff away, I want to say, where I think we had a bit of a comeback in that game. We rescued a result, but I think it was that game where somebody pulled one across the box, it hit the base of the post, and Josie was 1 yard out, like on the line to tap it in, and he still somehow put it wide. Like literally a yard. Could not get easier. We signed him for about 7-8 million or something as well. He was kind of along with Giaccherini, he was the marquee signing of that summer. He was supposed to come in and be the number 9. I think he just got 30 goals in Holland the season before as well, which I know, obviously, it's the Eredivisie, but for every Josie Altidore, you get a Luis Suarez. So, you never know. But yeah, look, a grafter, a lovely bloke by all accounts, seemed genuinely invested. He was a horrific footballer. I'm sorry. He was terrible. Like, one of his best moments, aside from the one league goal, just to emphasise that again, one single league goal in 40-odd appearances, plus his spell at Hull beforehand. God, I mean, this is turning into a bit of a rant, so I'm sorry, Josie, if you're listening. I'm sure you're a lovely bloke, but apart from that goal against Chelsea, one of the only good things he did was set up Barini against the Mags for that screamer in the 2-1 at home. And even that was accidental. He was definitely trying to take a first touch there. Nothing anybody can tell me. That's up there with Yaya Toure didn't mean his goal in the cup final for me. Like, there's no chance there's a world in which Josie Altidore meant to pass that ball. He couldn't do anything right. I'm sorry, he was just awful. And sorry, another one just come to us. The penalty that he won away at Chelsea when we broke Mourinho's home record, even that, he just accidentally stood on the defender and fell over and somehow got the penalty off it. In the VAR world, that does not get given. I'm sorry, it wasn't a penalty. It was his clumsiness.
Intervention from Andrew.
No, Johnny. That penalty, and I think he won another penalty during that relegation battle, just proved defenders couldn't handle him. That's all that's all that was.
Yeah. He had a bit of the Abdullah Bar about him in the sense that, like, defenders couldn't track him because he didn't have a clue what he was about to do next as well.
I tell you what, my Johnny, you've said there, apologies to Josie if you're listening. Fair play to the lad. If he's downloaded this and still stuck with it for an hour 15, just every minute going on thinking, I'm going to be mentioned in a moment. I'm going to be mentioned. You'd like to think that he would have switched off by then. Do any of you lads remember he did score a brilliant goal for us
at home to Arsenal?
Yes, and it got
chalked off.
I seem to think it actually got chalked off for a foul on him. Was that right?
Yes, it did. And then he didn't send the defender off, despite the fact that Altidore went on to score. How can it not be a clear goal scoring opportunity when he could put the thing in the back of the net, man? Oh, Andrew, you've just awakened such a long dormant bit of anger.
Told you. I'm seeing a different side to you, Johnny, today. I didn't know you had this in you, but if that doesn't sum him up, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I'm going to the one thing I'll stick up for Josie for is, if Andre Mariner knew how to referee a football game, Josie Altidore would have scored 20 that season. Because if he'd scored that and got the monkey off his back, he'd have been a different player.
Yeah.
But he didn't, and he was shit. So, sorry, Josie, you're fourth.
Yeah. And look, just very quickly, I just want to bring Gav in because, look, Gav, there were some games where I thought he looked like a competition winner, where he just suddenly found himself, I've got this contract and they've spent 12 million on us or whatever it was, or 10 million on us. And this is a wonderful competition that I've won. I can't remember entering it. But you're talking about derbies. I'll put the argument to you that actually Altidore always stepped it up against the Mags.
Yeah, that game, I think we talked about this last week. That won the 3-0 demolition. It's the best Sunderland have ever played against Newcastle, hands down. Certainly in the era where we can watch televised games and things like that. He was brilliant. He tortured them. He had that ability. I think that was one of the reasons why people got so annoyed with Altidore, because he would have games like that where he was a nightmare for defenders, because he was a big lad. He was strong. He put himself about, as you said. He worked hard, but he just didn't have the final product. He was like, what do they call it? I think it's nice. It's sort of like a nice way to call someone shit, really. But he was a defensive forward, wasn't he? He grafted hard, but he didn't really put the ball away.
He got in their way.
Yeah.
He didn't kind of put, he was just a presence. It wasn't like he was clever with it or split players or anything like that. He just ran around a lot.
Yeah, but that was pretty much it. And that's why he's just above some of the other names, is because the effort was there. I think on the considering the outlay and, the fact that really he was our main striker for a year and a half, he just didn't do enough. One league goal in the Premier League is horrendous for the money we paid. And I tell you what, one of the reasons he's not higher on the list in terms of first, second, third, fourth, fifth for me is because we swapped him for Jermaine Defoe. And that's got nothing to do with him or his performances or anything. But I almost feel better about the fact we signed him because we managed to swap him for Defoe, which is still one of the best bits of transfer business ever done. How we managed that, I've got no idea. But yeah. I can't really say much more than what's already been said. He was crap.
Well, he was sixth on your list, and we need your top five now, Gav.
Yeah, well, fifth, we have the aforementioned Lilian Leslandes. I call him Leslandes. What did you say?
Anything that takes me fancy, Gav.
Leslandes, I don't know. Fourth place, Lawrence de Bock. Third place is Papi Djilabodji. Second place is Ricky Alvarez. And then top of the pops, Didier Ndong Ibrahim, as you called him earlier.
Yes, is his middle name, of course. Nobody knew that. But yeah, Gav, I actually want to go backwards to go forwards because someone who isn't in your top five, who we haven't mentioned yet, but he's in the other lads' top five, is Adnan Januzaj.
Cool.
You've got him down in eighth, and like I said, the other two lads have got him much higher. I mean, look, was he that bad, or was it just purely because he couldn't match the hype?
One of the reasons he's on this list when we put together the top 10 is because he hated every minute of being here. He never wanted to play for Sunderland, I don't think. I think he must have been held at gunpoint when he signed the loan contract to come to us. Because obviously he burst on the scene, ironically, against us, scored twice against us for Man U, and as a teenager, and looked really, really promising as a young talent. Maybe fell away a little bit, and Man U had seen the value in loaning him to another Premier League side to try and get some experience. And I just don't think he ever wanted to be here. He was dropped into a situation where we were an absolute mess. Moyes knew him from Man U, which I presume is why he signed him. If you look at this list and you look at like who really treated the club with the most contempt, it was probably him. He really hated playing for Sunderland. And ability-wise, had a fairly decent career, but he never showed it for us. I remember watching him against Chelsea, and he was all right in that game, but I think that's the only time he played well all season for us. He was, again, just another, I said arsewipe, arsehole. I've hired out insults left, right and centre today. He was an arsewipe. You immediately go down in my estimations if you don't respect Sunderland. I mean, you contrast it with the signings we make now. Every single player who comes in, you get the feeling they genuinely want to be here and they want to be a part of what's going on. You never got that impression with Adnan Januzaj. And obviously he didn't back it up with performances because he didn't play well for us at all. He didn't. Like I say, I can remember him having a semi. I think we got beat 1-0 off Chelsea, and it was a pretty drab midweek game, and he played all right. And then I couldn't tell you another game he played well in after that. Does it not amaze you by it? He's only 30. He's just turned 30.
Bloody hell.
So like he was a young man when he played for us, like a very young man, and that should have been to him. That should have been him going, what an opportunity I've got to play every week in the Premier League here. Even if they're struggling, if I leave Sunderland and I've played brilliantly all season and I win Player of the Year and I'm a shining light, then I go back to Man U and I can kick on. And he just never saw the opportunity. He didn't want to be here. Didn't love the opportunity that he was given. And then after that, Man U lost the faith in him and he got sold. And yeah, might have had a good career after us, but whatever. You didn't do it for Sunderland.
Yeah. But after all that, you've only got him down in eighth. And Andrew, you've got him as the third worst foreign player to have played for Sunderland in the Stadium of Light era.
Yes. I think right at the start of this, I'm going to call it a cavalcade of crap. I think that's the thing. Not a top 10, it's a cavalcade of crap. Right at the top of this episode, Chris, did somebody say that this could easily turn into the I Hate David Moyes pod? Because Januzaj, Ndong and Djilabodji were all part of that era. Like Gav says, they took the mick out of the club. I can forgive a player who maybe isn't of the standard or it doesn't work out for whatever reason. Januzaj had the talent. He had the skill. He was young. Like has been said, he should have been desperate to play and establish himself. And he didn't lift a leg. He just didn't lift a leg. He just couldn't be bothered. And a word I don't like using very often, I think he was a coward. I the amount of times you would pull out of challenges or just not try was just ridiculous. So frustrating for me. And yeah, I think it was a case of David Moyes had given up any sort of hope. He couldn't be bothered, so he just signed players like Pienaar that he knew from previous and almost give them a free ride. Somebody like Januzaj, if he turned out those performances for another manager, he would have been sent packing long before he did, and yet he kept getting selected.
Yeah, well, we normally do upbeat things on here, Andrew, but that's the first time I've seen the look of disgust on your face while you're trying to get the words to describe it.
I honestly don't like being critical of people because I think, there's all sorts of reasons why a player might not work. And I wouldn't like it if somebody was on a podcast now calling me all the names under the sun.
Wait, I hope we do.
Eh?
Wait, well, we do.
Yeah, fair point. I've told you, man, I'm a man with kids. Go easy on us. But with Januzaj and my other ones of the top three, I just have no time for them. I would cross the road. If they were walking down the street, I would cross the road. I've just got no affection or feeling or anything for them.
That's brilliant that you'd cross the road if I'd walking the other way. I love the thought of that. You just, right, I don't care.
Just Januzaj looking really confused. What's this fucking idiot doing in front of me? Crossing the road here?
Yeah. But look, moving on, because we've got, like I said, we've got this top three to look at. And we'll go on to you, Johnny, because we'll move on to Ricky Alvarez. And you've got him in third, and it's interesting because, and we'll kind of come on to it, I'm sure, because again, is this circumstantial? Because you can almost say that some of what is around the legend of Ricky Alvarez, I suppose, was some of it maybe out of his control.
The legend of Ricky Alvarez again.
It couldn't have went more wrong, could it?
No, you're right. Again, this is a contextual, circumstantial one rather than anything he, as an individual, did. Not that he was great when he played for us, mind. I can't remember how many appearances he ended up making, but he kind of sporadically appeared through that 14-15 season, didn't he? I think his best game was probably, was it Fulham in the Cup that season? And even then, he didn't really do much. But he wasn't horrendous. Like, he didn't look like a competition winner the way that some of the players have. But if this was top 10 farces in Sunderland history, well, he still wouldn't be number one, would he? That'd be Milton Nunez. But he'd probably be second instead of third for me. Because, I mean, we literally don't have enough time left in this podcast record to actually go through everything about the Ricky Alvarez deal that was ridiculous. I mean, getting into a legal battle with, was it Inter Milan? I nearly said Juventus there, but getting into a legal battle over whether we should actually have to pay any money for him, trying to send him for surgery and getting turned down, going to court because we ended up trying to, shuffle him back off to Italy, and then they tried to shuffle him back off to us, and then we ended up having to pay him for lost wages because we refused to sign him, breach of contract. I mean, the list just goes on.
It went on for years as well, by the way.
Yeah, I think, didn't we only make some of the last payments like a year or two ago or something?
I can't remember, but I remember when Donald and Methan were in and they were on our podcast. I remember being brought up. They were dealing with legal battles to do with Ricky Alvarez.
It was a fucking shambles, man, from start to finish. One of them periods that just makes you embarrassed of everything to do with your club, because you look at it and you go, what the hell are we doing here? Like, we're a Premier League football club, and we've managed to so cock up a signing that we've paid the full transfer fee for him twice, plus fines and charges and fees and wages, and been embroiled in lengthy court battles over the course of getting on for a decade. Like, what was that, man? Like, how did any of that happen? So it's harsh on him in a sense, because it's not his fault that his tendons started to disintegrate and Inter wouldn't let us send him to go for surgery. But my God, in terms of like net impact of a signing overall with everything included, he's got to be close to one of the worst.
Well, yeah, and it's that definition, isn't it? But actually, just reading about it, it was only January 2021 when he was awarded £4.7 million in compensation from Sunderland, and apparently that took Sunderland's total costs in relation to the Alvarez deal to more than £20 million.
At a time, Chris, when we were in League One and we didn't have the money.
Yes. Well, yeah, and initially, I think it seems like, reading between the lines, that we tried to do a countersuit, but then Kirill Louis-Dreyfus dropped it pretty much as soon as he came into the club and just kind of wrote a line under it and dropped the whole thing. But Gav, I mean, we're getting into the money straight away. And actually, sorry, just to put a bookmark on the money thing. You talk about the £20 million and all this sort of stuff. The funny thing is, we even had to pay €360,000 to Velez Sarsfield as part of FIFA solidarity payments.
This is what I mean, right, about the fact that we literally cannot cover all of the aspects of how much of a genuine disgrace.
Yeah, it probably needs a deep dive at some point, that, doesn't it?
Well, Gav, you've got him in second, but this is in. I mean, because I remember a cup game at Fulham. He was decent in. I'm trying to think. I can't think of another game he was brilliant in. But I can't. But the thing is, with Alvarez, he's this kind of. He's one of these players during this era where I think I've just completely wiped from my memory in him, which means I'm trying to think. Was he really awful, or do I just not remember him? And I'm struggling to actually remember him being really shit.
I can remember one game, Bradford away in the cup, when we got beat 2-0.
Oh, yeah.
He was shocking in that match.
Yeah,
absolutely shocking. He just didn't fancy it. They were a lower league team. The pitch was like a farmer's field. And you could tell from the minute he stepped out, he just wasn't up for it.
And you could say that for the rest of the team, though, in defence.
Oh, well, John Stead scored.
I was just going to say, he played for them that day, didn't he?
It was appalling. And Phil Parkinson was manager of Bradford.
I was going to say, who was their manager, yeah.
So that's one that immediately stands out to me. But for me, the reason he's second is not just because he was pretty anonymous as a signing, but we signed him. Did we not sign him injured as well? Did he not come in injured? So that was stupid.
Yeah, but this was the whole thing. I mean, without trying to go into details, he was already suffering from a condition. Yeah. And we said, if that flares up, then the deal to sign him after the loan deal is null and void. Our medical team said this flared up. The Inter Milan said it wasn't related. Yeah. And in the end, a court said that we were wrong and they were right.
Yeah, it was the whole situation was a mess. And, someone said just before there, a lot of this isn't necessarily his fault. But you can't not judge this as a signing, as a piece of business, and not have this conversation. Because 20-odd million quid for a player who, for all intents and purposes, should have just disappeared off the face of the earth and been just another name, just somebody, well, whatever. He played for us, it didn't work out. It dragged on for 6 years till Kirill wrote the deal off. Just easily the worst bit of business we've ever done, easily. When you consider how much we lost on it. And you're right, there probably isn't many games that spring to mind immediately when you think of him playing badly, but it's because he just never played. It was just, if you look at this signing on paper before you get into the, well, he had these problems and whatever else, you can understand why we signed him. He came from Inter Milan. He played a decent amount of football for them over 3 years. International. I think at the time, Poyet was trying to bring in players with that South American flair all over the park, and he certainly had it. So you can totally see why we signed him. And I can remember at the time being excited about it. So I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't bring that up. But he, just a really, really, really bad bit of business in the end. Like one which had detrimental effect. When we talk about the club having to sell off academy products and do all these things, all these corners that they did cut in League One just to get by, we had that hanging over our heads at all times. So the knock-on effect of signing Ricky Alvarez went on. If you think about it, some of these lads we sold when we were in League One that then went on to do pretty well elsewhere, and we just lost them. Kids, I don't know, but we may not have had to have done that had we not had this problem. that had been carried on for years and years and years. So, you know, the knock-on effect, we really ought to do at some point, if we can be asked to depress ourselves enough about it. I think it's the sort of thing that does require a bit of a deep dive and just sort of a look into like what happened and what went wrong and the court cases, and because it's a very, very expensive problem that Sunderland brought on themselves. So yeah, I'm not talking about what he did on the pitch necessarily, but he's second for being the worst bit of business in the club's history, in my opinion.
I'm just chuckling at you, Gav, who's never lost for words, who's struggling to find the words to describe how shit this is. But actually, just in terms of on the pitch, just very quickly, he started 8 games. This might tell you everything. He started 8 games for Sunderland, and I'll ask you all, how many times do you think he was substituted in those 8 games?
8?
In 8 games. 100% of the time he started, he was substituted. And he came on as sub more times than he started for the club. So good value for 20 million, wasn't it, Andrew?
Yeah, just a brilliant deal all round. No complaints from me whatsoever. I actually feel an element of sympathy for him. I think he was...
Get off.
Well, yeah. I think
you are
he
a
was...
sadist.
Well, I'm not that much of a sadist, because when you suggested doing a podcast deep dive into this, I thought straight away, I've not got the strength to be involved in that. Count me out of that one. I think he was a bit of a victim of this himself, because he was a player with a bit of pedigree. He'd been part of the Argentinian World Cup squad in 2014. He wasn't a complete mug. He was a decent player, and his career has been impacted by this. That's why I didn't have him as high up, because I think it wasn't so much him being a failure. I think it was the club letting themselves down. There was a lot of stories around that time, of just muddled thinking and bad processes and bad management, bad admin. And this was just the big example of that. The club just thought, oh, we're in the Premier League, the money's going to pour in. At no point do we have to be sensible in how we do things. We'll just do things on a whim. And if down the line we want to say, no, we're not going to pay, we'll take somebody to court, we'll do it, whether we've got the right to do so or we've got a strong enough case or not. That's probably why Louis Dreyfus came in and just thought, nah, we're on rocky ground here. Just get it paid up and we can move on. Because otherwise we could have still been battling out this one. Just madness.
Wow, yeah. Fierce defences of Ricky Alvarez and Lawrence de Bock, Andrew. You're a brave fella, mate. You're a brave man.
I'm an idiot. I'm an idiot. That's what I am.
glutton for punishment. Yeah. All right, I did it earlier. I'll do a cascade of candor. There you go, Andrew. But we'll stick with you, Andrew. Papi Djilabodji. For you, he's the worst foreign player to have played for Sunderland during the Stadium of Light era.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I think he's probably the worst player, full stop. He was an awful, awful defender, and how he was at so many professional clubs, I will never know. I remember I did a little search of this, and then I kind of just got so sick I stopped looking. I remember a few months in, David Moyes having to talk to the press about Djilabodji was doing extra training sessions to drum the basics back into him. I'm sure it was something along those lines of, we think he's got talent, but he switches off in games and blah, blah, blah. And he does mistakes you don't expect to see at this level. I don't know what they were doing in those extra sessions, because he didn't improve. He was just, he might as well have not bothered being on the pitch. Just had no positional sense, no discipline. I remember he would go and challenge for a header despite the fact somebody else was already there, and that meant he left his man free. So if the header then got lost, that man was free to just wander in on goal. He would just utter dirge. And then, to top it all off, he had the cheek to not turn up for pre-season training, and when he did turn up, he was out of shape. Just, man, you're taking the piss there.
When we're talking before about Ricky Alvarez and mismanagement at the club and just probably the arrogance to think we could just get away with things and what have you.
Yeah.
How does a player who Chelsea paid £2 million for, never kicked the ball for them, went on loan to Werder Bremen and played a handful of games, end up costing us £8 million?
Well, can I just quickly come in at that point, Gav? Can you put us right if my memory's rubbish here? But I remember David Moyes saying that this was one that Allardyce had already set up.
Possibly. I don't know. I don't remember that one. But
I don't know if anyone else has got any memories on that.
That does sound familiar. That was one that Moyes hadn't necessarily been the driving factor in.
I might be wrong.
Well, I'm worried that this might now sound as if I'm making excuses for David Moyes. I'm willing to stick up for Laurens de Bock. I am not going into battle for David Moyes.
Wow, that's a sentence.
Well, I mean, I'm not. I don't want to get myself in hot water here, so I'm not going to say anything dodgy. But there's something not right about that deal. Put it that way. That the price jumped that much, and regardless of who was manager, it went through anyways. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah.
You can make your own assumptions based on that, but there was something not right about that deal, in my opinion.
Well, he was out on loan. I mean, he played for Werder Bremen during that season. Okay, I get you that he didn't play a game for Chelsea, but you know, Chelsea at that time had some good players, and he wasn't necessarily brought in to play in the first team. So he was out on loan at Werder Bremen, you know, and he had from what I'm reading, they were. He had a couple of, he had a too much ban for making a throat-slitting gesture, apparently, late in the season, which is,
nice
I
guy.
think, was the highlight of his season. But I know what you mean, but it wasn't like he was sat on his backside not playing at all for Chelsea that season. But still, I did exactly the same when I looked at that 8 million compared to just a few million that Chelsea had paid for him.
He made 14 league appearances for Werder Bremen, so his value's gone up nearly nearly $500,000 per Bundesliga appearance.
Yeah.
For a centre back, not playing for the title winners. Like, are we all being serious here? Let's call a spade a spade. It was a joke.
Yeah, well, it's not like we signed a kid either. I think he was 27, 26 at the time. So, you know, we hadn't gone out and signed somebody who was the next big thing. Yeah. I mean, even his move to Chelsea was weird. And look, again, that's a deep dive for somebody else to do. Bloody Chelsea's transfer dealings over the years, how they work things out. But you know, they for whatever, they just used to sign at this time, particularly. They used to just sign players with no intention of playing them, and he was one of those players. They used to sign players, loan them out. I mean, you can understand if you can get 8 million out of Sunderland for a player you've spent a couple of million on and never played him, you can understand why they did that. But we had our pants pulled down with that one. He just wasn't good enough. I mean, even if you look at his career, 5 years in France, fair enough, played for Nantes, who aren't one of the fancied teams, gets a move to Chelsea, gets a move to Sunderland, still playing now, I think, in Turkey.
Yeah, but his team just got promoted to the top division in Turkey.
But like, again, we had our pants pulled down. He was nowhere near good enough. And a key was, in all of this, we clearly hadn't done any homework on his character because he just didn't fit in. He wasn't a good fit. He was part of that little crew of players who poisoned the dressing room, who weren't the right type of people to pull you through a relegation battle. And then, I mean, we don't know exactly what wages he was on, but it was enough to make it difficult to get rid of him because in the end, the club got them on technicalities to sack them, to get rid of them, you know?
Yeah. Well, just on that, Gav, you're the only one who hasn't got Djilabodji in your top two, and because you've got Alvarez in there. Whereas, and I'd argue that Alvarez, we talked, yes, okay, it was awful at the end, but there was some of that was out of Alvarez's control, and it went to the courts, and they made decisions, and that was the subject of that. And you can maybe say that was Sunderland's fault in Alvarez's case. In Djilabodji, he could have turned. There was nothing stopping him turning around and saying, "Well, I'm going to fight for this club, and if I get a move, I get a move." But he was only, in my lifetime, one of two players to have been sacked by the club. Yeah,
well, I remember, and again, this is probably just, you know, angling and things like that, but I'm pretty sure his agent or representatives came out when the club were trying to get rid of him and was like, he wants to play, he wants to be involved. And we were like, he can fuck off. We don't want anything to do with him. Because it was him. Let's be honest, we were getting Donald and Methven's version of things, and then there was his version of things, and the truth might have been somewhere in the middle. It wasn't just Gillabodgy, obviously we'll come on to Ndong, but there was Jack Rodwell too at that time, Brian Oviedo, Catamol, they were all on big money, and they just wanted rid of them, and they didn't want to have to pay to get rid of them. So, again, probably worth a sadistic deep dive at some point, all of this. But, for me, he was where we were talking before about some of these names where, like Alvarez, for instance, we didn't see loads of him. We didn't see loads of De Bock. We didn't see loads of Lily and Leslons. With Gillabodgy, he had a fair run at that position in the Premier League. He played quite a lot of games. And then when we got relegated, obviously what had gone on, and he just wasn't in the plans, and we loaned him out to France. We just got him out the building for a year, but we were still paying most of his wages. So in that season when we got relegated from the Championship, Gillabodgy was still costing the football club an absolute fortune to play for somebody else. I mean, I kind of think and we'll come on to Ndong, as I said, but with some of this stuff, with Alvarez, with Gillabodgy and Ndong, these are the lessons, like when we talk about lessons learned about how not to do things, those will always be examples used for how Sunderland can never go back to being that way. We can never go back to being ran like we were, like a circus, because they almost epitomise the very worst of that era and the reason we ended up in League One in the first place. And you're right, Chris, it's not necessarily Ricky Alvarez's fault that it all went to shit. You could kind of argue to a degree it's not Gillabodgy's fault Sunderland paid $8 million for him and gave him a massive contract. It's not Jack, and even with hindsight, you look Jack Rodwell. It's not Jack Rodwell's fault the club gave him $70,000 a week. But they've got an obligation to meet in that. They've got to play at the best of their abilities. They've got to train every day. They've got to work hard for the football club. We unless I'm missing something, we never saw that with Gillabodgy. And he'll always forever be associated with the worst, in my opinion, just the worst period in the club's history, because he was poor on the pitch and poor off it.
Yeah, well, let's move on to our last one, because it's going to be
Chris, I'm itching to go back in on him again. I want to have another pop at him.
Well, his name might crop up again because we're going on to his mate, aren't we? Because, I mean, what kind of idiot could forget this guy's name? Didier Ndong is our top of the pops, and we'll go to you, Johnny, because you do have him in top spot for you.
Well, he was Gillabodgy, but more of a prick and twice as expensive. And he had McDonald's chips as a haircut. Like, where do you even start with Ndong, man? Club record signing. Again, I mean, what was going on with that deal?
And we're only starting to wipe him from that list now, aren't we?
Yeah, thank God for Enzo Lefebvre and the rest of them. So this lad never has to turn up as Sunderland's record signing again, but record signing, he comes in and you're like, okay, right. I've never heard of him before in my life. I've got no idea who he is. He's just played in France. He must be good if we've spent neck end of 17 million on him. What a great point of view that turned out to be. And then the season starts, and basically from day one, you're like, oh, right, we've had our pants pulled down. Right, I see what's happened here, because he was shit. But on top of that, then, again, it's like everything Gillabodgy did, except worse. We go down. He's like, well, I'm too good for playing in the Championship. So, well, you weren't good enough to play in the Premier League, mate, so I don't know where you've got that one from. He went on loan to Watford and managed to make 0 appearances while we were in the Championship. And then I was going to say then he comes back, but that was the whole problem, wasn't it? He didn't come back, I think it was him, wasn't it, who was posting, like, Instagram stories and that of him, like, lounging by a pool and that on holiday while the lads were back in pre-season training. And you're just like, you're such a bell end. It's just what you want to say. Like, you want to just grab him and shake him and be like, why are you being such a prick? What are you doing? You're earning thousands and thousands and thousands of pounds a week to play football. Just go and play fucking football, man. He was probably the first player where that childlike, football, man, it's all just a dream world and it's like, it's a whole fantasy. No, that it totally died for me with Didier Ndong. That was the last vestiges of that childlike naivety leaving my spirit was Ndong, because just everything about him. fucking us off to go AWOL when we were meant to be in pre-season, thinking he was too good for the leagues that he helped us get into. Did he even come back before he got sacked? I mean, I know Djilobodji come back and then he was unfit. Can't remember whether Ndong actually bothered his arse to get back in the building before he ended up getting the boot, which couldn't have come soon enough. But yeah, just like I say, everything that was wrong with Djilobodji, you can just turn up to 11 with Ndong. He was absolutely every single aspect of modern football that's wrong and that people hate. You can basically find every single bit of that somewhere in Didier Ndong. Flashy, cocky, arrogant, way worse than his mouth would have you believe. Overpriced, overpaid, no effort, no desire, heart the size. I mean, even saying he's had a heart the size of a pea would be generous for that prick. Like, greedy, selfish. I actually don't even want to keep talking about him because the oxygen I'm expelling in the breath that I'm taking to form the words is worth more than he was. And I'd rather keep the oxygen, thanks.
I mean, Johnny, I wish you'd stop sitting on the fence and say what you really think.
If Andrew comes in and tries to defend Ndong here, I'm going to reach through the screen and physically scrap him.
Well, we'll go to Gav first because I think he'll join you because he's got him in the top spot as well. But it's interesting, isn't it? Looking at that championship season, spent big money on Ndong, club record signing. He starts 19 games, 16 in the league that season. Lamine Kone, who was spent loads of money on, and he starts 24 games in the league that season. So it's amazing, isn't it? How much money you're probably talking? 20 odd million just in those two players?
Yeah,
and we end up bottom of the championship.
Well, one of the big frustrations with Ndong is he did show flashes of ability in the Premier League. So if you remember Palace away, which was a really random win, we were like 4-0 up at half time despite being the worst team in the league. He scored a great goal in that game. There were occasionally flashes of this lad's got ability, but never more than flashes. And I think by the time we got into the championship, he'd kind of just given up, hadn't he? And we had given up on him. But there's a whole section on his Wikipedia page which is actually worth a read because it's very entertaining. Now looking back, now we can sit back and go, haha, that was shit, wasn't it? But like at the time, it didn't feel entertaining at all. He was a waste of space. Another lad who came in, look, from Gabon, which is not a privileged country, had probably grown up with Nout and then had come to Sunderland making God knows what he was making and spent it like it was going out of fashion. Apparently the club had gangsters turning up at the Academy of Light looking for him, debt collectors looking for him. I mean, it was even said around the time we were trying to sack him that he feared coming back to the Northeast because he felt like he was going to be arrested. It was never stated what he would be arrested for, but you sort of hear all these stories about gangsters turning up and his money problems and things like that, and you put two and two together, could possibly make four. This guy was dodgy and didn't know what he was. We used to call Papi Djilobodji Papi Dodgy, and dodgy was just a big word at the time, wasn't it? And Dong, easy for me to say. And Dong was a very dodgy person. I wish he'd been called Djilobodji, but just a guy who just gave very, very little back to the football club. I talked about looking at the Djilobodji fee and thinking, where did the magic that one up from? Same could be said about Ndong because there was nowhere near he was worth anywhere near 13.8 million rising or whatever it was that we ended up paying for him.
The season before, Gav, was his first real full season playing for Lorient.
Aye. And there were stories at the time that Lorient only wanted 6 or 7 million from him. So how we ended up paying twice that, again, I'll leave that up to people listening to try and make their own minds up. But, Ndong was just horrendous, wasn't he, for us? And the whole carry on trying to get rid of him and sacking him and the problems he brought to the football club, just a horrific piece of business. And by the way, no one's mentioned this yet. We turned down signing Jan and Via to sign him, which just was the cherry on top of the cake, really.
Thanks for that, Gav.
Yeah, sorry.
That was the context around it. You're right. We were squabbling over a couple of million to turn Via into a permanent deal, and yet we found the money for this lad. Johnny's right. Both Ndong and Djilobodji they just epitomised everything that was wrong at the time with football and with the club. I think you've got to ask questions of the club for signing them. You do have to ask questions of the players as well. I mean, they were literally not fit to wear the shirt. Just absolute jokes. And Ndong, and I'm surprised, Gav, you said there, it's a shame Ndong wasn't called Digitally Dodgy or whatever. But I mean, I can think of a few nicknames with dong in them that could describe him, because the guy was, the guy was a dick. I mean, I remember.
Did he have the dong?
Yeah, I remember being in the town. It was just like a regular afternoon, and I saw him coming out of a bank, and he jumped in his car, managed to drive the wrong way up a one-way street, like properly horsing it to the point of like James Bond style. Somebody's having to like jump back against the wall to not get run over, and you just think, come on, you're a bell, you're an absolute bell. And literally, the only reason I had him at number 2 and Digilabodji at number 1 was the 2 words on my note was Crystal Palace. He did score one decent goal for us.
And actually, well, in terms of longevity, which is, but Digilabodji didn't rock up for the championship, and Ndong did.
Oh, yeah, and that went really well for us, didn't it? Thank God we had Ndong in the second relegation in a row, like.
Do you remember we had a horrible run of, like, comical red cards?
Yes.
Clark Salter got a couple of horrific red that were almost laughable. And then Ndong got sent off for a shocker at Cardiff. It was on Sky TV. I was in a pub watching that on my own. I think it was 0-0 at half time. And then within 10 minutes of the second half, we were 4-0 down, and then Ndong had been sent off for an assault on somebody. Oh, God.
Yes.
I very rarely swear, but I'm getting pretty close to it with these two.
Well, I was just about to say, I think we need to stop it there, because he's been building up slowly through this pod, and I think he's all just.
And then we had Clark Salter mentioned as well. This is just paying this, like.
Well, look, genuinely, like, in terms of those two, they were streets ahead in terms of being at the top 2. They were the only ones who were exclusively in the top 5s across the board, and actually they were both in all of your top 3s. Ndong was top, and second in the 3 list. I mean, they were streets ahead of everybody else. So it was completely unanimous that those two were at the top. But look, let's go through our 10 when we put the averages together of the 3 lads' lists. So in 10, we had Pascal Chimbonda. In 9, Lillian Lalonde. Number 8, Lawrence de Bock. 7, Tor-Andre Flo. Number 6, El Hadj Diouf. Number 5, Jose Altidore. Number 4, Adnan Januzaj. 3, Ricky Alvarez. 2, Papi Digilabodji. And number 1 was Didier Ndong. So that was our top 10. I want to say it's fun, but honestly, I think looking at I wish this was kind of not just audio, because if you see the looks on the 3 lads' faces, I think they all need counselling after talking about it for a couple of hours. But yeah, please let us know what you think. Please let us know if you think we are wrong. You know, it's all opinions, and we might have gotten the top 10 wrong to start with. Who knows? You might tell us you think otherwise, and some of those players that we mentioned right up top should have been in that 10, and then we got the 10 wrong in terms of putting them in order. But that just leaves me to say, Andrew, thank you very much, mate. Always a pleasure.
No, it's not. It's not a pleasure. No thanks at all, Chris. It was horrific, and I think once this call's over, I'm going to organise welfare checks for all 3. Yeah, just. You know, please, I hope none of you are home alone at the moment. I hope there's somebody you can go and just have a quick cup of tea with and just, pull yourselves around.
Andrew, I've spent loads of hours with you doing this. I've never seen you that cross and that angry about anything.
I mean, look, this just shows you how annoyed I am by some of them. I mean, wow, I'm talking about drastic measures like crossing the road to avoid them. Now, that just shows you what kind of crazy, unbalanced, unhinged fella I am. If you piss Sunderland off, if you piss us off as a club, I am going to turn the other cheek and ignore you. So bear that in mind, lads, next time you want to mess Sunderland about.
Well, I'm surprised that didn't overrule the Crystal Palace game. And but to be fair, the one-way system in Sunderland is a nightmare. But anyway, that's a different podcast entirely. Johnny,
I work for the council, Chris. You're now upsetting us as well.
I think, Andrew, we need to finish this before Andrew blows. Johnny, thank you very much, and I hope you do recover from this. And we're going to have to think about whether to do another worst top 10, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, cathartic in a sense. I do feel a bit like I've just run a marathon with how aggressively I was slacking off some of the players towards the end. I even had to have an emergency cup of tea brought in halfway through because I was getting that radgy like. But yeah, pleasure just about.
Yes, just about. And Gav, I mean, I really hope we've got the Rook Report legal team on speed dial, mate.
Yeah, there's a few dodgy comments thrown in there, wasn't there? That mainly from me. So, I'm probably going to get sued by Didier and Dong now. Yeah, we'll see. I'm actually not as angry as the other two are. See, I'm always looking for the positives, Chris. And you see, the fact I know that Sunday are never going to be quite as bad as they were back then gives me a bit of heart. So I can look back at these things and go, well, we're not that shit now. It's great.
Don't say things like that, Gav, on a recorded podcast, man. We're never going to be that bad again.
You know how much faith I have in this club? It's never happening again, trust us.
We
will not sign it. We will not sign another arsehole like Juf, like Ndong, like Gilabodji, like Yanazai. I'm telling you, it'll not happen again. We've had our fingers burnt too many times.
Hang on, Gav, as you say that. Latest news on SAFC.com. Sunderland have brought Didier Ndong back in a transfer swoop.
New club ambassador.
He is a free agent. He is a
free agent. Used to play for Lorient. French.
No.
But, it's nice to see you very woosah about all this, Gav. But the other thing to keep us going, Gav, we've of course got millions to come on How We're the Podcast.
Yes, and we've had lots already this week. So, there's been the chat you had with Andy Sixsmith, which was, I really enjoyed that. Despite him admitting to being a Newcastle fan, you'd never know it. So positive about Sunderland and complimentary about Sunderland. And that one was really, really worth a listen. And you can get a bit of insight into what that was like to meet the players and the staff at the academy last week when he spent a bit of time there working on behalf of BBC 5 Live and Football Focus. So definitely worth listening to that one. But there's also the On This Week podcast, which is coming up on Monday. We've obviously got loads of pre-season friendlies and stuff over the next coming weeks. So we'll be previewing and reviewing and reacting to games like that. And, of course, the transfer news, which is just never ending with Sunderland. I mean, as we record this, there's loads going on still. So they're giving us plenty to talk about. So plenty of pods to get your teeth stuck into. And, get subscribed if you're not already. We're here every day.
That's it. Merry-go-round never stops when it comes to Sunderland, does it? It just keeps on going, and we haven't had a second since that day at Wembley, which just felt like the summer's just gone in 2 seconds. But we do appreciate everyone who listens, and of course look out on the Roker Report website, because everything Gav's mentioned there we'll have covered on the website as well. But from us, bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.